User ask in Reddit, what made you walk out of a date? I am sure I'm too late, but this has to be said. I am a white man with light blue eyes and went on a date with my friend's sister-in-law. She commented that I have beautiful eyes and then followed it up with, I guess I've always agreed with Nazis about eye color. Okay, weird, but let's chalk that up to first date jitters. She then goes on to talk about how she has always had respect for the Nazis and their ambition, and in fact, was a Nazi in my past life. That was more than enough for me to get the best worst date story of all my friends. I got catfished by a girl who has sent me fake photos, and it wasn't even close to her. She immediately addressed this but in a way that would make it my fault if, had an issue with it, if that makes sense, like, I know lied about how one looked but only because I knew you wouldn't date me and looks are superficial. No problem, let's see who she really is. I wish that was the reason ran for the hills. She invited like 7 of her friends as consultants or advisors and told me to pretend they weren't there. Sitting around at a huge table at Toronto's old spaghetti factory, all the while she's asking them advice while we're on a date. Like if I asked her, what do you do for fun? She would then turn to her friends and ask them what she should say. After the hardest convo of my life, she then asked if I wanted to watch some special edition Harry Potter with director commentary or something with all her friends at her house. I made up some random emergency and we never spoke again. She just kept talking about work endlessly. I tried to change topics by asking if she had any hobbies. Nope. Just ranted about how work wouldn't let her pursue any. Would just keep on talking about herself, how tired she was because of work, and basically made it seem like she was doing me a favor by coming out on this date, when she could have worked. She did not even ask me any questions. Every now and then would check her phone and would nod in him and yeah pretty much. I made up an excuse, and left. Took her to my company's Christmas party. Everything seemed fine until we went upstairs with a few people to partake in smoking. Upstairs there was a chalkboard people had written messages and such on. Out of nowhere she got up, drew a swastika and announced "fuck the Jews" with a giant grin on her face. I ushered her out and called her a cab. We referred to her as that racist chick thereafter. Took a gal to Starbucks, bought us both a drink so we could sit and talk. About 5 minutes into it she takes a phone call from a coworker, puts it on speakerphone and begins to savagely shit-talk everyone the two work with. On speakerphone, in a small semi-busy Starbucks, both parties cussing up a storm. The barista at the counter asked her to take the call off speaker as people were trying to study, they were, and she proceeds to argue with the barista about how she can't take it off speakerphone, blah blah blah. I instantly got up and apologized to the barista on my way out of the store. Didn't message her, didn't hear from her. Matched with her on Tinder and we bonded over our shared love of food. She mentioned not having gone to any good restaurants in town and was tired of places like Kelsey's or Lone Star. Decided to take her to a really nice place in town as I had just got my tax redeems and could afford a $200 meal. During the date she talked with me and was engaged right up to when she ordered her food, an appetizer, wine, dinner, a second dinner for lunch the next day and dessert. After her order was placed she took out her phone and spent the next 20 minutes just browsing Instagram while I tried to talk with her. Excused myself to the bathroom and instead talked to the waitress. Got her to cancel my meal and dessert, only had my appetizer at that point. Split the bill and paid what the 20% tip for the whole thing would have been as it wasn't fair for the waitress to lose out on her tip. My phone blew up about 5 minutes later when the waitress told her what was up. See, the funny thing is, I have no problem paying for a date even if there isn't a spark if my date at least is engaging/respectful. But being used for a free meal, nah fuck that, there are more deserving people with less in the world that I'd rather give back to. She was blackout drunk before got there. Back in college I was going on a date with this girl. She wanted me to meet her at her sorority house when I got off work around 3. I go there, she is blackout drunk on a couch and wanted to cuddle. I hadn't had anything to drink so I just left. The next day she asked me why I never showed up. We didn't talk anymore. I oversaw her texting her friend referring to me as a free dinner, so it took her to the shittiest, dirtiest greasy spoon type place I could find and played the most uptight cheapskate asshole possible until SHU walked off. Then I went to my favorite Korean place. He started rapping. Loudly and poorly, oh no beat, that could hear anyway. The first half of the date was so normal that when he started his freestyle I was convinced cameras were going to pop out and tell me I was on a hidden camera show. After the 6 most mortifying minutes of my life I stood up, put my hand over his mouth and told him he was gonna call it a night. He continued to rap under my hand and I got my purse and left. The last text got, and ignored, was, sorry for the awkward situation, worst date ever. Not a first date but happened a few years ago. We were hooking up for a while and this was maybe the STH time. She was cool, good kisser and overall a great date. But we've never had sex or anything to that point. So this time we were making out inside my car. She was playing with my pecker and so I thought to retribute the favor. I fingered her for about 10 seconds and felt a weird odor. Just like a gentleman took my hands out of her pants and did the good old let me smell my finger while I hug her. Holy shit. That was the nastiest smell I've ever felt in my life. My nostrils were burning like a shot of whiskey. Immediately gave an excuse that I had to go to X place and that forgot. The whole way home my car was smelling and my steering wheel as well. I swear. Almost threw up. And had to clean that shit with alcohol. A few years later she calls me asking what happened that day cause it was weird. He was off guard and gave the best/worst excuse that I was still in love with my ex at the time and that felt weird, that's why I left. Well, I wasn't. I went on a date with a girl that brought her sister along. She didn't mention she would bring her. Went to a pub and got a drink, sat down next to this girl who was her sister which they just talked to each other. Then her sister got a call from a friend which she said to join them. 2 minutes later her friend turned up. This was in the space of 5 minutes and I had just brought a drink so wanted to finish it but felt it was too weird. Got up to leave and they asked if could buy both the girls drinks. I said sure, went round to the bar and then just walked out. Didn't feel like I needed to explain myself. It was in my second date with the girl. She invited me to the movies. When we were waiting for the movie to start she reads a message in her phone, and with a beautiful smile tells me my parents are joining us for the movie, I want to introduce you. Maybe they will invite you to Christmas. It was August and a fucking second date. Then I told her that he was not interested on meeting her parents and that I was going home.